It's now time for the first of our two panels. We're going to have some discussion this morning. And the first panel is entitled, How is Technology Enabling Improvements in Canada's Agri-Food Sector? To grasp the importance of cybersecurity to agriculture and to food producers as primary processors, we need to better understand how widespread an impact technology is having on the ag sector. This session will provide that context. I'll turn things over to Brennan again, and we'll have our panelists, Michelle Edwards, Marco Coppola, and Rob Hannum introduce themselves.
Great, thank you so much, Cornelia. I appreciate it. And I'm pleased to follow the keynote here by being the moderator for today's panel discussion. So we are joined today by an incredible group of folks whose expertise range from data and operations through to biosecurity and interoperability. So quite the fascinating spread there of subject matter expertise. But as Cornelia had mentioned, before delving into our discussion, let's get things started with some intros. So we'll first go to Michelle, then we'll go to Marco, and then turn things over to Rob. So over to you, Michelle.
Great. Thank you so much, Brennan. And good morning, everybody. I'm Michelle Edwards. I'm the Director of Agri-Food Data Strategy here at the University of Guelph. I'm coming at things from the data perspective. So I've been working with data in the data field for 20 to 25 years as a researcher, statistician, and for the past 10 years at Cornell University and here at Guelph as a research data management specialist. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Marco.
Thank you, Michelle. Good morning, everyone. As Brendan mentioned, my name is Marco Coppola, and I got my formal start in the agriculture industry when I joined a company called Dot Technology Corp in 2017, shortly after the public launch of the Dot Power platform that many of you may be familiar with. I worked in roles such as business analysis, marketing, and operations towards our transition from Dot into Raven. And so while my history hasn't been very long in the industry, it certainly seems like it's been much longer, and it's definitely not because of lack of enjoyment or engagement. It's actually quite the opposite. It seems long because of what myself and the team that remain with us since the Dot days have had the opportunity to experience in that time. So to summarize the past 5-ish years, we worked tirelessly as a startup to develop, market, and commercialize the Dot Power platform. In the early days to joining forces as one team with one of our largest technology suppliers, Raven Industries, during our first external capital raise when Raven acquired the majority stake in Dot, and then early in the summer of 2020, the remainder of the company. As after Raven's acquisition was completed, Dot, I spent much of my time working in business development with them. So not necessarily in direct sales, but more in a literal sense where I was responsible for aiding in some of the final integrations between Dot and Raven to finding a new home for the team and moving the group into a facility which now serves as the formal headquarters for Raven Canada, just a few minutes east of Regina, Saskatchewan. Fast forward 2 years, nearly to the day, and we've wrapped up yet another major transaction where Raven was acquired by one of our largest customers in the ag space, Case New Holland. So in the span of that 4 or 5 years, we went from a small handful of employees at Dot to an organization of nearly 1,500 people when we joined Raven to today, where we have a growing organization of over 35,000 team members. So a short period of time, which is why it seems like it's been longer, a lot of experience in a short period of time. Today, I work in a role called Business Excellence Management, which is a project-centric role. I focus on improving and developing processes for the way that we do business internally, as well as with our customers, utilizing some of our recently enhanced systems, such as our CRM and ERP systems that have recently undergone some pretty major overhauls. So that's my 5-year history in the ag industry as quickly as I could do it. And with that, I'll pass things off to Rob to introduce himself.
Great. Thanks, Marco, and good morning, everyone. I'm Rob Hannum. I'm with Farm Health Guardian. Farm Health Guardian, we are a software company that is in the animal agriculture space. We're based in Ontario, but our customers span across Canada. We've got users of our system in 5 different provinces. And we're actually just this year in 2022 launching into the US and the UK, and we have a customer in Switzerland as well. So we're an ag tech startup, as we call it. We launched Farm Health Guardian in 2020. I'll tell you more about digital biosecurity and how we're helping the animal ag sector in a few minutes here. So thank you. Brennan, back to you.
Come off mute here. Thank you so much for the introductions here. Each of your intros gave us a great sample of what's to come for sure for today's discussion. But first, I want to go over today's format. So you heard some intros, but what I'll do here in short order is I'm going to call upon each one of our panelists who's going to give us a brief presentation on their subject matter expertise. And once each of our panelists have set the stage for us, we're going to shift gears to opening up the floor to what I'm sure is going to be a fascinating panel discussion, and of course, your questions. And with that said, I'll be keeping a lookout for any questions that do come up via the Q&A or via chat. I think we're going to try to aim to get folks to do the Q&A just so that we can have that filter. But if that is giving folks a bit of trouble, then be sure to drop it in chat, and I'll be keeping a lookout for that. But if you wouldn't mind, maybe just your name will come up, but also too, if you wouldn't mind just letting us know where you're dialing in from, that would be great if you are comfortable doing so. So without further ado, I'm gonna get it so that we start things off with Michelle, who's going to help us unpack the fascinating topic of research, including a historical look at all the different research projects and how we cannot answer any research question without data. So I'll turn things over to you, Michelle.
Awesome. Thank you again, Brennan. I'm just going to try to share my screen here. You know, that's always the big challenge, right? Oops. All right. Everybody see that? Perfect. Thank you so much. So I'm going to take my approach to this whole topic coming from a slightly different perspective, in that I'm going to be concentrating on the research world because that's my comfort zone. So I'm going to kind of stay in my comfort area. But I do want to talk about, and I want to reaffirm that data is the foundation building block to all of the conversations that we're going to be having today. So if we think about research, so think about, if you take a step back and think about all the research that's been conducted over, let's be generous and say the past 100 years. So we've got research happening in different lab situations, out in the fields, agriculture, or animal agriculture, crop agriculture, it's all over the place. And you think about, why did we do all this research? Well, because we're curious beasts. We're curious about all these different fascinating questions. So we have a number of research questions that we want to answer. And asking a research question, it's not a matter of, well, I'm curious about something. I think this is the right answer. You think, well, maybe that answer is a little bit different. So let's find something in between and let's see what people think. That's not how we conduct research, is it? It's not how we answer research questions. We're going to go out and we're going to collect a bunch of data. We're going to use that data as the foundation to answering any of our questions. Thinking about in a lab or in a laboratory situation, we might have some instrumentation. That instrumentation is going to collect an information or collect data. We're going to use that data to help answer the research question. If I'm thinking about, I have a picture there of asparagus. If I'm interested in creating a new variety of asparagus, what am I going to do? I'm going to go out, measure those spears, measure the growth, take a look at the genetic background, and use that data to help me make that move towards a new variety. If I'm looking at my cattle here, I might be interested in creating a new feed formulation to enhance growth and to produce a product that consumers are looking to purchase and enjoy. So I would just want to make sure that we're all on the same page to realize that no matter what we're doing, data is the foundation. We can't do very much without data, whether it's in the research world, whether it's in the industry, whether it's in business. Thinking about projections of markets, they don't just kind of come off with a decision willy-nilly. They base all their decisions on data. So data really is the foundation to answering any research question. But that doesn't come without its challenges. So again, in the research world, I made the comment that, we've been collecting data, we've been answering research questions for the past 100 years or so. Imagine 100 years, 100, the studies that we've been conducted over that time, and thinking about all the different data that's been collected. I mean, there's oodles and oodles of data sets out there. I'm sure many of you have seen this similar image with the Lego stones. Think about on the left-hand side, all those different Lego pieces. Every one of those Lego stones is a data set. 100 years of data. Imagine how big that pile of Lego stones might be. How do we deal with that? How do we use that? How do we help move our agri-food data sector ahead when we have all this data? So think about all the challenges associated with it. We need more information about those data. We need to know who collected it, when it was collected, how it was collected. What are the units? What are the topic areas? So how do we move from this pile of Lego stones to something that we see on the right-hand side, this beautiful wall? Now, some of you might be thinking, well, Michelle, we've got these Lego stones. They're all square. They're all rectangular. Why don't we have this beautiful, perfect wall, straight edged? Why aren't they categorized? Why aren't the colors matching? Why do we have this odd looking shape of this wall? Think about our data. All the data is not the same. Data comes from different sources. Growth data, genetic data, genomics data, social survey data, environmental data. Think about some of the challenges, the research questions we're dealing with today. Climate change, for example. We're not going to be able to answer any research questions in climate change with just one type of data. We're going to have data coming from the environment, coming from animal agriculture, from the crops, from the social science. So we need to find ways to put these individual blocks together into some format that we can actually move forward. So yes, the word technology is being used in different ways, but I like to think of it as it's a way to help us take these blocks and put them together. The data culture, to me, is probably one of the biggest challenges in research and I think beyond the research world. So thinking about industry and the producer side of things is why should we share? Why do we share data? Why should we share data? How do we go about doing it? And I'm thinking, how do we change that data culture? How do we change the culture to say it's okay to share data? Yes, there are challenges with sharing it, but let's start with the first step. We need to collect the data and we need to be able to share it. I had an interesting conversation with a grad student yesterday, and I asked him, I said, how do we change the culture at the grad student level so that grad students are comfortable sharing their data? His answer was imposter syndrome. And I thought, whoa, what do you mean by that? And he said, well, a lot of students, and I suspect well beyond the student area, they're afraid of exposing themselves. They're afraid of exposing their data. They're afraid that it might not be good enough. It might not be clean enough. They're afraid of people coming and saying, well, that's just garbage. We don't want it. And I think that notion or that culture is prevalent well beyond the research field. So how do we go about changing it? What do we have to do? Some of the challenges that we're seeing in the research field is that data culture, for one, then thinking about, sharing and access. I mean, in order for us to make any large advancements in the agriculture sector is we need to take that data. Remember, 100 years of data that's been collected. We need to take that. We need to make it available. Thinking about our funding agencies, there's now this new movement towards we need to make that public good available. We need to ensure that our researchers and our researchers value the data. We need to be able to share it. But we're hitting some challenges. There's another word, can't come up with it right now, that researchers are thinking, no, I can't share my data. I need to wait. I need to make sure I get all these things in place. I need to get all these papers written. I need to get all my students pushed forward. I can't share the data. I'm not sure whether I share the data, people are going to treat it with respect. Are they going to understand what I've collected? So that means that, well, before I can share it, I need to write some documentation. I need to ensure that everybody understands what I've collected, how I've collected it, the units and so on and so forth. That's going to take time. I'm not sure I have the time to do that right now, but I'll get around to it. And we know, just looking at our history, that sometimes that just never gets done. And we have these oodles and noodles of data sitting there, not being available to everybody. Then if we flip that around and say, okay, well, there's a large amount of data out there that is accessible, that is being shared. But then the questions become, well, who should have access to it? And how do they access it? And that's probably one of the bigger stumbling blocks that I see in the research field right now is how do people how do they share their data? I mean, gone are the days, or I hope gone are the days that we're sharing it on USB keys, or that we're sending it through email without encryption, like Brennan had mentioned earlier, and so on. But it's a huge area. There are so many challenges there that I think that we're going to see some more of these challenges come up later on today as well. Security, how secure am I in sharing my data? There's so many questions out there. So I do want to kind of close off my quick intro to say that, yes, in the research world, there's lots of data out there. We need to be able to pull it together to make it accessible, but there's still a lot of hesitation there. So I'm going to stop that and hand it back to you, Brennan.
Thanks so much, Michelle. What a fascinating topic. And I definitely want us to delve into what she just went through here. We'll now turn things over to Marco, who also happens to be joining us here from Saskatchewan. And Marco is going to be shedding some light on something which might not always be top of mind, which is business value. You'll hear more from Marco about how the idea of using data as building blocks, building on, sorry for the pun, but building on what Michelle was talking about. Marco is going to help set the stage for us on what I can imagine is going to be a key area of focus for folks joining us today, no matter their role. Take it away, Marco.
Thanks very much, Brennan. I think you hit the nail on the head. Michelle's presentation was a great segue into what I'm going to talk to you about in terms of using data from different sources as building blocks to create business value. And so when you say, how are we using data to create business value? It seems a little bit self-serving, right? How are we going to create value for this business? But in reality, one of the most tried and true ways to create business value is to create products and services that deliver value to your customers. And what better way to do that than using information that you have in data that's available to you, past or present, to inform the way that you're developing those products and those services that will ultimately deliver that customer experience that you're after. That's what I believe really drives business value, is that customer experience. And so we always pick on the usual culprits in terms of companies like the Apples and the Amazons of the world, but we do it because they do it well, right? They've taken an amazing customer experience. And that's something that we should look to emulate a little bit more in agriculture. As a company like ours, a technology OEM, we're a manufacturer of precision ag products. How can we reinvent the customer experience and work backwards from there? What's our desired outcome? What kind of value do we want them to extract? Or better yet, what value do they need to extract from their interactions with our products and our services to really obtain the most value for their operations? So getting to data, when you're an organization like ours that's largely made up of STEM employees and primarily engineers, how do you use that data to inform decisions with respect to what is worked on, right? You have a lot of highly qualified personnel, and allocating their time to certain projects is a very important decision that has to be made on a continual basis. And so sometimes the answers are very straightforward and seem obvious, such as looking at interactions with our digital products to see where customers are spending most of their time, right? And focusing improvement efforts on those specific functions to deliver some further value. But relying solely on that data can be very misleading. Michelle summarized it perfectly when she said that data is not the same. It comes from different sources. And so what we need to do is take that information from multiple sources and marry it together to actually deliver something that's tangible and valuable to our customers. So as an example, imagine that the only reason that the customer is using that specific feature on our digital products is because it's just difficult to find something else that's actually more valuable to them. We run into that all the time. If you're, I guess most of our audience would work for an organization where they could take a look at their website analytics and say, okay, these are the pages that are visited most frequently, so let's put our information there, when really something that your customers actually need is just buried at the bottom of the page and people don't end up finding it. And that's where you should be focusing some of your development efforts, right? So it's taking the information from multiple sources, like the analytics on your digital products, but as well as interactions with your customers. So for us, we use primarily our sales and support team members that have face-to-face interactions with our customers on a day-to-day basis. And we rely on them to relay that feedback into our engineering team so that we can marry up that feedback from that source and all of that data to the data that we're seeing on the back end of our digital products to say, okay, this is what next steps are going to look like in this production increment to deliver some more value from these products. So that's a little bit of an example of how we can use some of that data to deliver value. And it's, more important than ever today because we have access to all of this information. But Michelle mentioned, 100 years of data, but data by itself is dumb, right? You need to be able to collect it, translate it, and turn it into actionable intelligence in order to deliver some value, not just for our business and creating business value, but for our customers as well. Another channel that we use to extract data from our products is working closely with post-secondary institutions. So Olds College in Alberta is a great example. They're currently utilizing an OmniPower platform, or formerly called the Dot Power platform, as well as a suite of implements. And they're using this not only to educate the students on some of the precision ag products that are available to them today. So for example, all the Raven products that are powering the OmniPower platform, as well as getting them to interact with actual autonomous equipment in the field. But we're using that so that they can relay information back to us in kind of an unbiased form as to what they see the value proposition for autonomy in general is. We were able to provide the products and services for them to utilize to do that research, to educate students. In exchange, we get some of that valuable feedback from them in terms of where they see the value proposition, as well as other information like compaction data and other efficiencies that you could obtain from using autonomous products or just precision ag products in general. So those relationships and that feedback is invaluable to us because it comes from institutions that, in some cases are better set up to capture that information, report on it, then relay it in a way that represents kind of the industry's best interests. And then we use that, as I'll continue to use the term actionable intelligence, to say this is what we need to do to deliver more value to our customers and to our business at the end of the day. So I would say that the bottom line is that it's increasingly difficult and often ill-advised to make decisions without utilizing data. So as the famous phrase goes, you can't manage what you can't measure. And I think that's never been more true than it is today. We use historical data and market research to inform business decisions that we make at Raven, the same way that growers use data from the field as well as past seasons to make decisions on how they're going to be growing the best crop possible in the upcoming season. So while they're using information that's specific to them, we're taking information in aggregate to guide what we do. But if I was to summarize the key point, I would say it's a perfect mixture of trying to use some hindsight and current insights to create some foresight. And that's how we guide what we do as an organization. And it also helps us kind of attach some accountability to the decisions that we make in terms of development resources. And that's what we use data as to try and deliver some more value to our business.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Marco. That's a lot of definitely valuable information there, and the great segue from what Michelle was talking about in terms of building on that. So we will give the last word over here to Rob, who is going to close out our context setting portion of our session before turning into our group discussion. Now, Rob's background in the areas of animal health and biosecurity make for what I think is going to be a great opportunity to build on what Marco's points were on data sharing and particularly data interoperability. So without further ado, I'm going to turn things over to Rob, who's got a presentation, who's going to walk through what we need to know. Over to you, Rob.
Great, thank you. I'm going to sort of build on what's already been said, but also give like a specific, maybe small, but concrete example of the benefits of data sharing, but also the importance of data as a foundation and building blocks, as Michelle said. So the title of our panel here is How is Technology Enabling Improvements in the Canadian Agri-Food Sector? I'm currently working in animal ag. Most of my career has been in the crop side or a little bit in horticulture, and it's been a great learning experience to really be immersed in animal ag and animal ag tech on the past 10 years, or sorry, the past 5 years. And I got the chance to, have a number of conferences or pitch sessions that I've attended. And through that, over the past, let's say 18 months, I've seen a number of new technology companies, digital tech, usually in the animal ag sector. So to answer the question, how is technology enabling? These are the problems I see that people are trying to solve. Increasing productivity, right? Higher yields, better throughput, higher rate of gain, or improved quality of food. Animal disease, how are we reducing animal disease risks and improving animal health? Labor shortage, and that's been a huge one that we all see every day in the news. And then animal welfare, of course, is something important for our sector. And so what are the solutions that I see coming forward? Well, there's genetics solutions, and we see that every day, advancements in different crops or livestock species. Nutrition, so animal feed, animal health products, and always new advancements in that side. But from a digital and cybersecurity aspect, what I really see is sensors and monitoring, robotics and automation, and that all leads to data-driven decisions. And that's what Marco just said. He said hindsight, insight, foresight, and it would be ill-advised not to use data when you're making decisions. So those are the things that I see coming. And what really, you step back from it, farms are on a technology journey. Whether you like it or not, whether you want to be or not, you're on a technology journey. Some are moving fast, some are moving slow. And so this technology journey, from my standpoint, starts at the bottom left with data collection. And so that's sensors and monitoring. And really, those things are telling you what's happening. So whether it's a yield monitor in your combine, that you've had for the past 15 years, or it's the water temperature ammonia sensor in your barn, and that's telling you what's happening. Okay, good. That's a good start. You won't get further down this journey without starting with those building blocks. So don't think you're going to sit out and then just come in for automation and machine learning. You need to get started on your data and technology journey. When you've got those sensors in place, the next part is analysis. And I think that's the insight part that Marco mentioned. So using that information for decision making, and you're trying to figure, well, why did that happen? So the temperature is up in the barn, or there's lower productivity, or the birds aren't drinking. Why did that happen? The cusp that we are on the verge of moving to is predictive analysis. So predicting what's going to happen in the future. And so you can say what will happen, and you can maybe make a change. And then the ultimate example, and likely there's some sectors are more advanced in this than others, but every farm is on this journey, and it's moving towards that machine learning or predicting the future, and then self-adjustment of the system. So the barn fans automatically adjust, or the down pressure on the planter, the corn planter, automatically adjusts based on the soil and the moisture or whatever. So that system self-adjustment will just be that natural progression of these 4 steps. So here's an example maybe of the benefits of sharing data. And the statement I guess I'll make here is that animal diseases are a shared risk among livestock producers of that species. And sometimes diseases can cross over other species as well. I'm going to give 2 examples and then talk about how we're approaching that. And really think about Michelle's comments that data are data culture. She said that it's okay to share data. Well, here's an example of a benefit of sharing data. So an Iowa State study had 75 groups of piglets that were negative for a disease known as PRRS. So 75 groups of pigs were moved into the nursery stage, or from the nursery stage to the finisher stage. So they're moved to a finishing barn. And at the end, when those pigs were monitored through their life cycle, 73 of those 75 groups developed a disease. How can that happen? So the outcome of this study at Iowa State was that the frequency and timing of movements, such as delivery trucks, deliveries of supplies, maintenance vehicles, livestock moving from farm to farm, corresponds closely to the infection of PRRS or another disease known as PED. And so when it says corresponds closely, like to me, that's the research speak or the research answer for it moved either through animals moving or other objects moving. And that's how those 73 of 75 flows of piglets got infected. There's a lot of movement in this industry. And here's an example. So this is a research project we're doing in Saskatchewan this year. And thanks to the support from Kane, who's putting on this conference today. They are a partner, I guess, with this project. So thank you. There's 26 farms involved with this, 10 trucks. These are feed or livestock trucks from different companies. And what we're doing is using a geofencing system and pulling in the GPS data from those trucks to record when a truck arrives and departs at one of those 26 farms or agribusinesses. So it could be a feed mill or it could be a truck wash. And there's lots of movement, right? There was 1,438 visits just in a 3-month or a 4-month period there from April into early September. We're averaging, these farms are seeing 9.5 daily visits on average. When I go and talk to producers, oftentimes they see, well, I don't have a lot of traffic on my farm. There's not a lot of risk because it's just me. But the data would say that on these 26 farms, there was an average of 9 visits. So the highest day was 35 visits. That's likely a feed company, that feed location, but there's lots of movement. And so I guess I would say the US study showed that movement corresponds with disease moving around. There is lots of movement as shown by this example here. And I would conclude that like disease is a shared risk. Now, I know that farmers understand that and they take precautions like biosecurity. And I guess our approach to biosecurity is really helping producers get to the next level. So number one is we're focused on automatic data collection. People are busy. We're all short of labor. If I add another task for you to do, it's not really going to get done. So we focus on automatically pulling in GPS data from trucks or other sources. Then we turn that data, there's lots of it, we all are swimming in data, but turning it into information. So that's the insight that Marco mentioned. And then that allows producers, veterinarians to monitor all of that in real time and make real-time decisions. And that's the third step on the 4 steps of the stairs that I mentioned. Maybe we'll get to system self-adjustment in the future, but that's what we see as just an example of the benefit of sharing data. But there needs to be trust. There needs to be a data culture that says it's okay to share. But here's just one simple example I'll throw on the table for today. So to summarize, animal disease is a shared risk across the livestock sector. But we can mitigate these risks by sharing data and having interoperable systems, right? So the GPS from the different truck fleets that's, confidential for that company, we can share a snippet of that information into a central database that's controlled by someone who's authorized to. Likely, in our case, a veterinarian, likely with a permission to view the data in the case of a disease outbreak only. So having that trust, permissions, all that stuff set up really is an opportunity here to take our sector to the next level of automation. So I'll go back to the panel here, stop sharing, and let's get on with the questions.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Rob. And I know I'm going to have to try to keep us down to our allotted time because each of what you shared and what the rest of our panelists shared is fascinating. So we'll try to get right to questions. And I have been noticing that there are some questions appearing in the chat, which we'll get to in just one second. But again, I just want to thank everyone on the panel here for walking everyone through the context ahead of our panel discussion. So I can imagine there's going to be a lot of questions. So be sure to use the chat again, just as a reminder to post your question. And I'll be sure to keep a lookout for what comes in, and we'll keep the conversation going for those joining us. And again, your name will be shared here if you do ask a question. But if you are comfortable, let us know if you can share, if you're comfortable again, where you're coming from. So the first question I see has rolled in is, and this is one that, I think we'll pause first. One question that seems to be the common thread amongst each of you is, what do you see as the common thread to help us improve Canada's agri-food sector? I'm going to turn things over to Michelle first and then to Rob, and we'll give the last word to Marco.
Thank you. I think one of the pieces that kind of came out in all of our discussions too is, I'm going to use the word culture, that data culture, right? So that understanding, the education piece of it, right? To know that, like I really like your last example, Rob, is that information that we're capturing that maybe we don't realize what the effects are because we've never thought about capturing that data. So I think education, being aware that there are many players in this to be able to capture that information and recognizing that, that data has value, that data can be transformed into information. I think that's, to me, that's probably the most common thread.
Rob?
Oh, I'm not sure where to start. I think the benefits of digital technology in agriculture are huge. While we're advanced in many ways with self-driving machines and tractors, we are primitive in many ways. I go into lots of barns where paper is what's being used to take notes, and that is very easy for the worker in the barn. She or he is taking notes with pen and paper on a clipboard, and their job is done. But getting that data into a database so the vet can see it or so the manager can make decisions is not happening as well as it needs to be. So I'm just rambling, but digital technology has huge benefits. We need to go faster, but people need to realize you've got to start at the bottom of that rung, and you won't see all the benefits day one. You need actually just a commitment to say, you know what, that's where I want to be, but I know I've got to start here. And the benefits will be there, but they're small at the start until you get going on the system. And then we as companies improve the features and give you, more value, I guess, business value that Marco said. So you've got to start, you've got to have a commitment. We need to go faster as a sector in Canada.
Marco, over to you.
Yeah, I think Michelle and Rob both summarized the trend there very well. The only thing that I would perhaps add is that the industry, whether you're an organization or a grower, for example, we all kind of have a vested interest in improving the way that we operate and how that entire value chain operates, and sharing that data that we've captured in one sense is probably a way to improve it, that people are looking to do a little bit more, but there's always the conversation of risks of sharing information. And so I would say it's very fragmented today. And one of the trends that I'm seeing emerge is organizations that are consolidating information across the value chain, while also kind of anonymizing it and making sure that there isn't identifiable features to the data that's presented, so that everyone in a particular region, organization, or sector of the industry can make better decisions on how they operate, which ultimately benefits the entire industry, which is what we're all working towards.
That's great. And I see we have a question here from Rita, who asks, well, maybe just the kind of an introductory point here. Since there are significant benefits to improving data culture, in quotes, and sharing of data and risk across the value chain, what are the related management and human challenges facing value chain participants? And the follow-up question to that is, how can the innovation ecosystem support the adoption of new types of data collaboration and the evolution of a new data culture? To shake things up, let's turn things over to Rob and then to Marco.
Okay. The first thing, there's two things that come to mind, and one I'll say is make it real, and two is let's not focus on fear. So make it real. As a business person, I work on my computer a lot. My customers don't. They work in a barn. They work at a food company. They work with computers all the time. But we have to take it out of PowerPoint and into their real life and show them and tell them stories about how this can really benefit their everyday. We've got to find how it's going to benefit me today or this week, or because I can't do anything extra. So we have to make it real, the benefits real. The second is, I think in our sector, we're focused too much on fear, what we might lose by sharing data. And I don't hear enough talk about what we're going to gain by sharing data. So there's all kinds of data protection issues. Why am I going to share my crop data? But like, what could I gain by sharing my crop data with the right people? It's always permission based. In our case, the customer owns the data. We don't own the data. So a lot of those protections are already in place, but we talk too much about fear.
Michelle, I can imagine you have some thoughts on this. Over to you.
Sorry, I was making notes thinking Marco's going next. That's good. I'm with you. The stories, the good feeling stories, yeah, I can't say enough about that. I mean, we're all in our little corner, this is my data. No, sorry, I can't. But if we are able to talk about how can we make these advances, what can we really do if we're able to share? And I like that, move away from that fear. Just, yeah, I'm just going to stop there because I'm getting antsy. No.
But and sorry for skipping ahead here to Michelle and going over Marco here. But Marco, I want to get your take on what Michelle said there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that we do internally, and I think it was well said in that it's kind of presenting the stories and the use cases for it. So internally, when we have development projects, we are always required to create user stories, right? How is this product going to be used by our customers or by some of our partners or dealers or whoever the market may be for what we're developing? And I think that sharing some of those things externally is a great way to get more buy-in from the industry on the benefits of sharing the information that they have. Obviously in an anonymous format, but to show if this is what you're contributing, this is what you're extracting from this value chain to benefit yourself, your operation, or just the industry in general. And that's a great way to put it. I think Rob hit the nail on the head. It's share those stories. In terms of the second part of that question, which was how does the startup ecosystem or the innovation ecosystem support that? I would say that it falls in line with some of the trends that we're seeing today, which is those companies that are popping up and starting to aggregate data from across the value chain to tell a much bigger story. Whereas right now you see a lot of it kind of fragmented, or I'll use the phrase siloed in some cases, where you have information from A, B, C, and E, you happen to be missing D, and that would help paint a much bigger picture for you, or something that has a lot more tangible value. And so I think that's probably an area where the innovation and startup ecosystem could support that. But that's where I'll leave it.
And I was kind of smiling there because it really is fascinating how you talk about silos, and like there's a very agrarian kind of things that have become a part of this, like credential harvesting, like all these things in agriculture. I'm always entertained at how much of it relates to agriculture. But that's all very good dialogue here. And I see that we do have some questions coming in here as well, so keep them coming. The one that I'll get to next is, okay. So we have Lisa from CENGN. What role can vertical ecosystem players and government play to ensure or promote that interoperability is in place? I think let's go to Rob, then to Michelle, and then to Marco.
Okay, thanks. So vertical ecosystem players, I'm not sure. I'm going to, sorry, Lisa, I'm going to jump over that one, but what role can government play to ensure? I think government can establish forums and awareness and conferences, certainly, but for me, at the end of the day, it's suppliers and buyers. Like farmers and food companies, at least that we deal with, they buy from suppliers, they sell to buyers, and those companies have more of an impact on their day-to-day business. So I don't think government-enabled data sharing is an option or needed. I think the companies I buy my raw materials from, or the customers who are buying my product, are the ones who are going to say, yeah, let's share data because there's a benefit. I think that's how it's going to happen, as opposed to a government aspect, if that was your question.
I'll maybe double down on that one just to kind of channel that question, because I had a similar question. So is there a role for government here in terms of a leadership role, or should this be exclusively the sector?
I think so. I'll just jump in and then follow anybody. Yes, government can help promote, build awareness, but so yes, but the customers I deal with, they look to other spots for innovation, for new technology, for making their business better. They don't look at that. And if you talk about government and data sharing, there's some farmers who are going to just pull back from that. Why would I listen to the government about data sharing? That's not what they're focused on. But if my customer that I buy hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of inputs from, or my customer who writes me checks every week for the livestock I'm shipping, asks me about joining in some kind of group or sharing data for this good reason, then I'm listening.
And I see next, I think we turn it over to Michelle. Is that right? If I'm remembering the
Yes.
order? What's your reaction? Because I saw you, I was paying attention to your reactions there. So, and
Right.
I thought that I'd kind of shake things up a little bit. So are in agreement, disagreement? That's what I love about panels.
Yeah, it's all good. So I'm gonna, yeah. So I totally agree. I mean, let's face it. I mean, sharing data is going to come from what benefits the user the most, right? And I mean, money talks. And so I agree with Rob. I think it's going to come from industry perspective rather than the government. We have, there are programs in place now that the government, from the research perspective, is saying, hey, I'm going to give you some funds and you're going to promise to share your data. But there's no feedback. The loop isn't going to be complete as to see, are you actually going to share your data? And, there's always that pushback when you have the government suggesting or the government pushing you to do something. So I totally agree. I don't think it's going to come from the government. I think it's going to come from the industry and the different players involved at that point.
Marco, over to you.
Yeah,
Your
absolutely.
reaction.
So I agree with the sense that companies can provide a lot of that value there. So speaking to the vertical ecosystem, I would say that today we end up working with some of our, in some cases, competitors and customers more than we ever had before. Because at the end of the day, it's the grower, it's the dealer, it's our customers that ultimately need to benefit from the work that we're doing. With respect to government, the only point that I would disagree with is I do see a very valuable role for them to play in terms of incentivizing some innovations in that field, also helping to kind of work with industry to create policies and making sure that that information isn't being used in some type of nefarious way. There's involvement from that perspective, but then also on the education and incentive side for the consumers of those products, the people that will be ultimately submitting information, and, as well as kind of extracting it from that ecosystem for their operations. So I do see a role for government in that, but on the vertical ecosystem side, I would say today we are working with competitors and customers alike more than we ever have before.
And I'm struck by a word that seems to be coming up for each of you, and I think I'll transition here and channel the question here, which was posted anonymously, but the question was, is there a gap in education that needs to be addressed to ensure the agri-food farming sector is truly aware of the value of data and the impact of digitalization will have on their future competitiveness? And since we had the magic word value, we'll give the first word over here to Marco this time.
You're just going to unpack that question for a moment, but yeah, data aside, I think there is a gap in education, regardless, just from industry to consumers to manufacturer. We always seem to come back to the same comments where it is, well, we should provide more training on this. We should tell more stories on this. We always end up coming back there when it comes to why isn't this being utilized in the way that we would expect it to, or are they not seeing the same value that this group of customers in this region are? So a gap in education, absolutely agree. We can all contribute to that. More broadly speaking, I would say education in this particular field is more important because, as we know in the ag industry, if we're not out there educating on the benefits of utilizing digital products and data and information, we end up kind of being almost a taker or a victim of policies and demands that are created by customers, right? We need to put our foot forward and lead that charge in a sense of educating one another and industry on the benefits of using this information.
And Michelle.
Sorry, I was going to say, Rob, did you want to jump in first?
or actually, you know what? Yeah, good call here. Sorry, I had Rob covered here with the other screen here. I'll move that. There we go. Rob, and then over to Michelle.
Yeah, is there a gap in education? Yes. And it's a learning process. And the reason I would say there is a gap, because I see farmers in particular having different views. On one hand, it's like, oh, I'm really protective of my crop data. And I'm not sure about how it's going to be used. And so I'm turtling. I'm saying, no, I'm not going to share. But on the flip side, maybe that person or family members are using, other apps or technology with like no control. So like their Facebook settings or the way they use Google Maps or something, to me would be I'd be way more uncomfortable with that, when usually the data sharing within our sector, within agriculture, is very controlled. There's terms of service, there's privacy, there's lots of protections already. They're afraid of that, but letting things go on the other side. So yeah, that to me just says, yeah, there's a need for education for sure.
And Michelle?
So I think we all know I'm going to totally agree that there is definitely a gap in education. I mean, I really can't add too much more to what both Marco and Rob said, but it's something that we need. I guess the other side of it is, how do we address that gap? And who do we address that gap to? And I think that's something that we all need to work on and find a way to address, but it's definitely a huge gap. And I find it's almost getting wider and wider as, you know, data is being released more easily or not being released more easily. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so with this, another question came in here too, just to riff off of that, is there a risk on relying on data that seems clean, but is actually anomalous and leads to faulty decisions? So I think let's pick up on what you were saying earlier there, Michelle. I'd be curious to get your take on that, and maybe just kind of get a bit of a probing question in there.
Yeah, so I mean, you know, it all comes down, I mean, data, everything relies on data, but if you don't have the information, you don't have the description, you don't have the, I can use the word metadata around that data, it's useless, right? Or having the context of that data. So yeah, I think there's a huge risk in using data that appears to be clean, but you don't know where it comes from, you don't have the information about it, you don't know why it was collected, to what purpose, to use it for something else. I think it definitely goes down a path that we really don't want to go down. So we need to be, again, back to that education piece, we need to ensure that all the information about a given set of data is accompanying that data so that it can be used in the most appropriate way.
And so, Marco, I see you nodding here, and I think that you'd have something to offer in particular on this front. So I wonder if you can maybe paint a bit of a picture. So I'm trying to channel folks who are maybe sitting here listening and saying, this is great. We have a problem. We need to address these problems. What's some advice that you'd give to folks to help combat some of these challenges of relying on that data, cleaning it, making it available? What have you found useful?
What have I found useful? It's a great question. So first off, I think there's absolutely a risk on taking data at face value and relying on it. But I also don't think there's any insult to requesting to verify some of that information. So internally, I have a lot of team members that I would be comfortable playing poker with over the phone. But I don't think that they find it insulting when I say, okay, you've sent me this information. I'm going to vet it myself, and then let's have a meeting, right? That's just kind of a way that we make sure that we're all doing the best that we can, right? I myself certainly could miss things in the work that I put out, just as well as my coworkers. A second set of eyes, that extra step of verification doesn't necessarily mean that I don't trust the source or trust the information. It's just good practice to verify.
Those are all some great points, and I think we'll give the last word here to Rob. And I think I'll ask a similar question, just because I'm reminded of a cross-border livestock health conference that I had the opportunity to go to. I think that was way back in around 2012 or somewhere around there. And at the time, I think data and interoperability and all that stuff would have come in handy. So I'm just wondering, what should we be focusing on when it comes to using digital tools in agriculture, particularly with interoperability? What should folks take away from today?
Well, I think there's tremendous benefits to sharing data and interoperability of systems. And my simple example is just the GPS data of truck fleets, which is pretty simple, right? And then just think of all the other ways, pulling in weather data into other, your automatic machines that Marco's company is building. So there's lots of benefits. In terms of the data quality question, I think we're going to see more and more confusion in that area. And you used a chat GPT example in your keynote. And, that's another great example where you can ask a question and you get a great sounding answer, but you don't actually know if that's the right answer yet. And so that's a big risk. And when people see risk, they step back, they go back to what they've always done, if that might be the wrong answer. So I think trust but verify in terms of the data is where we need to be focused on. Work with companies you trust, make sure you at certain points you are verifying the data. But I think it's on the companies that are providing services and information or recommendations or devices or tools to really to be focused on that and make it easier for our customers. That's part of our job.
And thanks for that, Rob, and thanks to Marco and of course Michelle for those responses here. Just doing a quick time check here. We still do have an opportunity to answer, I think, 1 or 2 questions before we give the last word to each one of our panelists here to give some words of wisdom. Because as I think of how things are going and how we have covered just so much in such a short amount of time, I can imagine some folks are sitting back saying, okay, this is all really, really great information. But what are some quick wins that I might want to take away from today's session so that I can help usher in this very important conversation in my daily business? So we'll just kind of do, the typical awkward silence sort of thing to let the questions come in. But as we do that, did anybody just want to jump in here just as we wait, make a quick remark on something that we might have touched on or might not have touched on? We'll make this a popcorn round. So we'll go Rob, and yeah, if anybody wants to just raise your hand, we'll make it a popcorn round here.
All right, I've got an idea. So there's a gap in education. How do we fix that? I guess there's 2 things I'll say. Number one is I would love it if the promise of digital technology and data is on every farmer meeting all the time, whether it's a producer association or a company meeting. We talk about nitrogen fertilizer. We talk about feed additives. We talk about like the fuel efficiency of the tractor. Every farmer meeting, whether it's a company presenting or a producer association, I'd love to see a snippet anyway on data and digital technology and the benefits. The second thing is I'll make an analogy, and that's like looking back at us and as the industry here. When farmers talk about building public trust with consumers, they generally understand, hey, if we're on the same page and we're all singing from the same song sheet, we have a better chance of getting our message across. So I think it's on us in the industry that we should all be on the same song page. We should be saying there's lots of value in digital technology. You should be embracing this. You're on a journey. And if we as a sector were all on the same song sheet, talking about the promise of data and the realities that some of the benefits come in the longer term, you've got to be sort of committed to it, and it's that journey. If we were all more consistent, as opposed to saying, well, my tech is better than your tech, I think we'd be further ahead.
Who wants to jump in here for a response there, Marco or Michelle? Just raise your hand and I'll recognize you here.
Yeah, okay, no problem. I that last point that you made there, Rob, is great. And not necessarily saying my tech is better than your tech, but making sure that we're singing the same song, I think is super important. I mean, we're all kind of working towards the same thing, and that's what the benefits of competition is, right? It ultimately benefits the consumer, not just from a pricing perspective, but from an innovation perspective and a value proposition perspective. That's what competition helps to serve. And so if I was to, I guess, leave the audience with one thing, whether you're an organization or a grower, I would say work to leverage that data and that information as best as possible, because that's what allows organizations as well as yourselves to iterate more quickly, right? We live in the information age. You have a device in your pocket that, Brennan illustrated through ChatGPT can give you fairly qualified answers on a number of subjects. You can get almost any answer to anything that you want through some diligent research. The information more or less is out there. Share your feedback from what you're experiencing with the organizations that provide those services or products to you, right? That's what allows us to iterate. It allows us to improve the products and services that we're offering. That exchange of information, or let's say that exchange of data, is very important to what the future of the industry looks like for the better.
And I think we can accomplish two things here with turning things over to Michelle. We did have one question that I think will probably touch on your words of wisdom, which relates to helping to foster that willingness to share data. What's your view? What kind of things do you think folks should do?
So I think it all comes back to my favorite phrase, that data culture, right? You know, sharing the feel good stories, the education piece, you know, showing everybody that, you know, just because you're going to share your data doesn't mean it's going to go down that bad road. You know, showing how can we make that data more valuable, and where are we going to go with it? So how are we going to improve? How are we going to take it to that next level and remove that fear? I think it all comes back down to that data culture and developing those feel good stories. And I think we've got the people in place. We just need to act on it now.
All very, very wise words here. And I just want to thank everyone on the panel here so very much for joining us here today. I think that this has been a fascinating discussion. Terribly sorry that we have to cut things short here, but just want to say thank you to each of you again for sharing such great and diverse perspectives here.